médico norte-americano.
I want to get to the cancer before it forms, rather than wait for you to get it and then treat you for it.
Fred Pescatore, médico norte-americano especializado em nutrição. É mais conhecido como autor do livro best-seller Feed Your Kids Well, em 1998, e A Dieta dos Hamptons, em 2004. Ele também atuou como diretor médico do Centro Médico Atkins, do Dr. Robert Atkins.
I've been practicing this for 30 years now, and I've been treating cancer for 30 years alternatively. So I've been looking at this for a long time, and my biggest belief in medicine is, how did you get that? Not how do we fix it, but let's figure out how you got it. And then once we figure out how you got this thing, then we'll fix it. Whether and that goes for anything. That goes with diabetes, that goes with heart disease, irritable bowel syndrome, that goes with everything. Like, how did you get it? Well, why? What's going on? Then you fix that. So it's the same. So that's why, I may be different when I think about how cancer forms, because I want to get to the cancer before it forms, rather than wait for you to get it and then treat you for it. Well, I mean, what's going on is that we have an awful lot of reasons why people would get cancer now. So, for instance, we've got a ton of chemicals in our society. For instance, probably when I was born, I may have had 10 chemicals in my cord blood, that coming right from the mother. Now the average newborn has 795 cord chemicals. So they've been exposed to 795 chemicals before they're even born. So, and these are only the chemicals that can cross the placental barrier. So there's even more that they've been exposed to. So we've got right from the start people getting exposed to toxic chemicals. Then we've got, then you could add all the other toxins in. You could add water pollution, air pollution, anything that you can think of. The food supply that we eat is all poisoned. At least in the United States, everything's genetically modified, genetically engineered, filled with pesticides, herbicides, all sorts of things. So we're eating all of that stuff. So no matter what we do, whether you're vegan and eating nothing but vegetables, you're still going to have all of those toxins that we're putting onto the food to allow it to grow quicker, faster, whatever. So we've got that. Not to mention the amount of sugar that people eat. So sugar is is implicated in 13 different cancers. When you've got, the amount of toxins, the amount of sugar that people eat, the average American eats, 33 teaspoons of sugar a day. That's 156 pounds of sugar each year. So that's a lot of that. Just that one single toxin's enough. Diabetes has its own inherent risk for cancer. Obesity has its own inherent risk for cancer. So between all the toxins in the air, everything that we use to clean our desks, our computer screens, our clothing, all those dry cleaning chemicals, everything in the car, those new car smells, all of it, plastic. Plastic alone is a carcinogen. So we're in contact with carcinogens every single moment of our lives. Most traditional oncologists practice very much by a cookbook, right? So it's like, if you have X, then you do Y, and that's not necessarily the case right now, because we've got so many different we've got so many different targeted therapies, immunotherapies, chemotherapies, radiation therapies, low dose this. We're really learning and trying to refine where we're going. And plus, there's so many other options in the holistic, complementary, integrative medical world that a lot of people are opting for, because they realize that, they see their friends having gone through cancer and losing their hair and getting sick and being miserable and ending up dying anyway. So a lot of people are opting, so that's why I think I think fear is the biggest reason why cancer is on everybody's mind. It's because they think they're going to die, and they don't have to, by far, die from cancer. But I think, to your point, is that we're rapidly looking for new ways of treating patients, because we know that what we're doing is not really working, because we haven't really increased We haven't really changed survival times. What we're doing is we're getting to the cancer earlier. 5 years ago, we would have found it 5 years, and you would have had a 5 year survival time. Now we find it 8 years earlier. So now you have an 8 year survival time. That hasn't increased your survival time. It's increased how earlier we're finding it. Why do the conventional treatments fail? The conventional treatments fail because they're really old. Haven't had, dynamite success in drugs. I mean, we just haven't. I mean, we have some, and don't get me wrong, like testicular cancer in men, some lymphomas, some thyroid diseases. We have certain things that, we can fix and that are curable by conventional chemotherapy. And for sure, they should do that. There are certain cases that we know for sure you will have a 99% cure rate. So, of course, go ahead, do that. I absolutely agree you should do that. Of course, you should also do things to make sure your immune system's staying healthy through all of that. Most of us, as we're talking now, we're producing cancer cells in our body. So cancer happens no matter what, every single day. Every single minute of every single day, we're producing cancer cells. But we have an immune system that goes around and eats them up, sort of like Pac-Man. Chomp, 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 eats up all the bad cells, gets rid of them. Now, if you interfere with that mechanism that goes chomp, chomp, chomp of your cancer cells, that's where the problem arises. So it's the fact that a lot of these toxins interfere with it. That they're endocrine disruptors. So they interfere with our endocrine system, which interferes with all of the other hormonal systems that are in place to keep our genetics working, to keep our telomeres, safe and strong. Those antioxidants that are in our bodies are there to take away these harmful, toxic, cells that form, these cancer cells that form every day. So that's why it's so important, that we look at things like what we're eating, how much sleep we're getting, what we're doing for stress control, how much we're exercising, what nutritional supplements we're taking. So there's a whole plethora of things that we can do to keep ourselves healthy so that the cancer cells don't take over. So it's not like a cold or a flu or a bug where you're going to catch cancer from someone else. You're not going to catch cancer. It's just the fact that your cells are not, your body's not doing its job to get rid of it. And that's really what we have to do, is prepare our cells and our bodies to be as proactive as they can be in getting rid of whatever cancer cells may be forming in our body right now. Oh, I'm a big proponent of that. I mean, I've been talking about that my entire career. I think fasting has been proven time and time again to increase lifespan. That's why I'm so happy that we're now on this whole intermittent fasting thing, craze, at least here in the United States. I'm sure it's hit Brazil as well, where people only eat for 6 hours a day. And I think that's really helpful. We tend to eat too much food. When you eat too much food, your body puts out too much insulin. Then your body puts out, then you get too much sugar. Your body puts out too much insulin. If you look at our Neanderthal and early human ancestors, we were meant to eat a lot at one point, and then not eat for a couple of days because we couldn't find food, or we couldn't kill food. We would have to eat what we would forage for, or what we found on a tree, or something like that. And then when we'd kill an animal, it would be this big thing we'd eat because we couldn't save food. We didn't know how to preserve food. And so that's how our genetics are really meant to be. Ketogenic dieting works so well in cancer prevention and cancer control when you have it, is because a lot of most cancer cells rely on glucose for metabolism. So if you cut that glucose supply off, you're cutting their fuel supply off. And our brain prefers to work on ketone bodies. And ketone bodies are what's produced in a ketogenic diet. That's why it's called ketogenic. And our brain can work very well on keto bodies, and it works preferably on keto bodies, which is a better form of energy for our brain. So as long as our brain function is working, the rest of our body's working. Basically, what we're trying to do is starve the cancer cells at its source. And you can do that by denying them sugar. Hence why a lot of the alternative sort of ways of looking at things is putting people on anti-diabetic drugs like metformin. A lot of people in the United States take metformin as an anti-aging drug. because it decreases your incidence of diabetes and it decreases your incidence of cancer. So there's a lot of a lot of nutritional supplements that we give to people like berberine and chromium and all sorts of like blood sugar controlling supplements. We do all of that simply to control blood sugar because we know how important that is in keeping cancer under control. I mean, the whole purpose, whether you have cancer or not, the whole purpose of this is to really starve your cancer cells. So you have to do anything that you can starve your cancer cells with. So getting rid of sugar, taking diabetic medication, that sort of stuff really helps. And what we're really starting to understand is sort of the whole cascade and mechanism of how, what we call mitogenesis and how the cells divide and all of that. There are certainly cancers that are genetic, right? I mean, I'm not going to take that away. I mean, there are. I mean, and not genetic as in you will absolutely get it, but that you will be predisposed to it. So this whole thing with BRCA2 and women taking their breasts and their off and their, getting hysterectomies and all of that, that's hysteria. I mean, it's really quite crazy. When you look at genetics, there's a thought about genetics, which is if the seed has to fall on a fertile soil. So if the seed doesn't fall, if the seed falls into sand, it's not going to grow. But if the seed falls into, some place where you're filled with toxins, your immune system's messed up, all of this, of course it's going to be able to grow and stay there. And the fact that traditional oncology wants nothing to do with what I do really bothers me, except for one patient. It only happened just recently, like in December. I had one patient, pretty much incurable cancer, but she's perfectly fine. She's been my patient for 2 years. She sees the other doctor, gets some chemotherapy every once in a while. And he finally said, I really want to speak to your other doctor. I really want to know what he's doing for you because you're my only patient that's lived this long. So, will you please ask him, because I would like to either refer them to you or at least teach me what you're doing so that I can have that same success. And I'm like, finally, at last, somebody wants to learn what I'm doing for these people. Not just say, oh, don't just go ahead, do your voodoo thing, but I don't want to know anything about it. I mean, that's kind of the attitude I face every day in the United States. The traditional medical industry instills such fear in you that once you get cancer, oh my God, you should have it removed yesterday. Well, maybe not. I mean, just so you had it. I mean, if I had it today, I had it yesterday. I probably had it 3 weeks ago. I can probably wait another few weeks till I figure out what I really want to do, what all my options are out there, and really try to find the best treatment that works for the person. I think the first thing you do is you don't panic. You look at everything, you start researching. You start researching who's doing what hospitals are doing, certain different things. You start really asking around. Don't think you have to rush into any treatment. Start Googling things, start looking, at what's going on in the world, find out what drugs the doctor wants to give you, what the duration is, what the treatment success is, and most of all, what's the survival time. If I take this drug, will I live a day longer? Because that's what's really important. If it shrinks your tumor and you don't live a day longer, who cares? You've got to live a day longer. So that's sort of rule number one is grill your doctors and do your homework. Ask the right questions, go on, there's tons and tons of patient platforms out there of people who have this and that communicate with each other. And it's really a beautiful thing because half the times these patients will come in and they'll know more than I do, which is really great because then I get to learn from them. So that's sort of step number one. Do your homework, and talk to your doctors very strongly. Don't be afraid to get second opinions and third opinions because it's your life at stake. So just don't take one doctor's word for it. Second thing to do is radically change your diet. Go into your house, get rid of sugar, get rid of anything that turns into sugar. So we're talking any carbohydrate type thing, any simple carbohydrate, any bread, any pasta, whatever you guys are traditionally, a lot of those bean dishes can turn into pasta unless you're a vegan. Then those are your forms of protein, and that's fine. So that would be rule number 2. Try to get rid of any toxins, any known toxins in your diet. Like, don't use deodorant with propylene glycols in it, and aluminum and parabens and sulfates. Look at all of that stuff in your environment, because that's what's going to really be there for you. Get on it, and so that will automatically shift your diet, because just getting rid of the sugar, because again, people are afraid. So I don't want to say, okay, you've got to do, here's the 45 things you have to do. I try to like build them in gradually. Get rid of the sugar sweetened beverages that you drink, then get rid of, the sandwiches, then get rid of, you know what I mean? So you slowly build over time what they need to do. Then number 3 is really find someone you can work with who can walk you through the nutritional supplementation that you should be doing, that can enhance the chemotherapy, radiation therapy, or can take the place of in certain instances. So you really need to find somebody, a good practitioner. And, with the beauty of the internet and all of that stuff is, I take care of patients all over the world, which is really great. So I'm able to Skype with them, FaceTime with them, whatever. And we have our visits and we talk about, because there's so much nutritional information. I don't know how much there is in Brazil, but certainly in the United States, there's nutritional information everywhere. And it's very confusing to people. So I guess the third rule would be find someone you know and can trust who's going to advise you on your nutritional supplementation, because nutritional supplementation is absolutely 100% important to do when you're faced with cancer. Not at all. I mean, that's why we call it integrative medicine, so that we create a better world. A lot, some European doctors do it very successfully, and I learned from them. It's like, what you do lower dose chemotherapy, you do things like mistletoe, IV vitamin C, things like that. So you put it all together to create something better for the patient, not something that's gonna like clash. We never want things to clash. We want things to complement each other. So I don't think people need to necessarily give up their chemotherapy or radiation therapy treatment. Sometimes I feel they don't need them, but if it makes them more comfortable, and this is what I tell all of my cancer patients, only you and your loved ones and family can make the decision that makes you the most comfortable. And what's going to make you the most comfortable will give you the will to survive. Because if you're going to do something, because it's in here too. Surviving cancer definitely comes from here. Pretty much surviving anything comes from our brain. We've got to have our brain, we've got our whole body's got to be ready to fight and do all of this. And so that's why I think it's really important that whatever you choose for your cancer prevention and or treatment is something you truly believe in and can feel it. Because when you feel it and believe in it and have faith that it will work, it will.